Yo, what's good, everybody, man? It's your boy Rillo, man. One of the half of the Black Lunch Break, man. Sorry, my co-host Siga couldn't be here, but today we got Dijon Jackson of 5J Entertainment, also author of What About Me, and produced the show. I'm sorry, the documentary series What About Me. We got this brother on today. He's going to bring in some good conversation about why he did and what he's doing, the importance of it. So I'm going to bring Dijon up to the stage right now so everybody can say hello to this brother. But yeah. Dijon, how you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm doing great, Cirillo. Good to see you, my brother.
Likewise, man. It's always good to have you in the building, man, and on the set. So, but first thing and foremost, man, over the last, so we've done this What About Me series for a minute. We've done about 3 or 4 shows, but never really anything around the actual book itself. And so the book has just dropped. So how are you feeling about the book dropping so far?
Hey, I'm excited. A lot of love, a lot of outreach. A lot of eyes are opening. My goal was to educate, encourage, and inspire. And that's exactly what's happening. I mean, it's happening across the country, even in some parts of the other world. I've even had an email from Dubai. So in my estimation, we're on a good glide path. Excited about everything.
Now, D, we getting a little breakup. I don't know if it's me or if it's you. We getting a little feedback from you on your end.
Okay. Am I clear now? Testing.
Yeah, I mean, what feels crazy is internet is a weird thing, man. We were sitting up in here and rapping before this thing started, and everything was clear, right? And now we're on here. So look, if y'all just joining right now, though, we got Dijon Jackson, author. What About Me? Got this brother on here. If y'all just joining in, make sure you sharing and commenting and showing love. But I think Dijon, your video is getting a little bit better. A little bit better.
Okay.
Yeah. So D, man. So tell us about the book, man. Tell us about the book and what you got coming up next with it.
Hey, really, the book is about introspection into my life, what my parents poured into me, and my experiences, good, bad, ugly, and indifferent. Some of them not so good, but it was one of the things that helped me prepare and come to the realization that I got to try to help other folks with my voice, with my position. And so I wanted to write it down, and get that out. And I mean, that's essentially, that's a simple message. How do I get my story out to help others?
Now you had just mentioned that, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? So,
right.
I think it's important to really tell all our truths, right? And so, I think a lot of time you see on social media, people always talk about the good. They showing the flashy, they showing the pinnacle of their lives, right? I think Jay-Z mentioned something about when he was talking about Kobe, right? And how Kobe, how good he was, and how emulate the 60 points, but they don't emulate the process of itself. So talk a little bit about the process in which, you got to be some of the ugly and bad moments in your life that really brought to where you at to this day.
Well, yeah, the subtitle of the book is Walking the Tightrope as a Black Man in America. And that to me has been one of the most hidden secrets, for our whole history, the things that we had to endure. And as a part of me matriculating through college, middle school, high school, corporate world, what ends up happening is that there's certain things you have to do. And I experienced some bad things, early in my career. I'll give you an example. I had a guy walk up to me one day and says, "Hey, I was wondering if there was more to you than just that suit." I mean, kind of a microaggression. And out of the blue, I'm in a conference room and a guy walks up, and it wasn't a joke. He says, "I was wondering if there was more to you than just a suit," and walked off. I mean, so how do you handle that as a guy? Yeah, I was an engineer, young engineer. You make a presentation. So that's a minor one. I talk about some other things in the book, different things that I've had to deal with. Some a little bit more moderate, some a little bit more, I would say, drastic in terms of their impact on me. But I also wanted to highlight the mental anguish that you go through. When you're carrying that load and you're trying to balance yourself, you're trying to do your job, do your work, do the right thing, but then you're getting all this negativity. How do you balance that? And then how do you try to find out, remain true to yourself, but still get by and do the right thing when you see things differently happening? And that creates a degree of mental anguish. And that's something else you have to deal with. So I wanted to write about that a little bit for those folks out there who are in those same situations. You got a mortgage, you got a car, you got a family, and you're trying to do the right thing, but people aren't treating you right, but you know you can't go all postal. So you've got to figure out how do you navigate it. So I talk about that.
That's dope. And I think that part of, I think one thing you said was the balancing act, right?
Yeah.
And that's just on a myriad of levels. And I think that like that's a very like that's something we can unpack, and it'll probably take hours and hours of what it means to be balanced as not only a black person but a black man in America, right?
Right.
We've seen lately from being I seen a brother that just got harassed by the police on the corner of just trying to catch a bus, right? So we can't catch a bus, we can't walk, we can't run, we can't be successful without some type of outside forces trying to make sure they always got out, to a metaphor being used. But, we've seen with George Floyd, it actually a knee to the back of our necks. And, for you, kind of being a very successful black man, like how you kind of like balance, things in your life, whether it be work, family, school, just being a black man and kind of like, remaining even keel. What kind of type of things have you done over the years to keep an even keel balance?
I will tell you one of the things that's been very important for me. I tell everybody exercise when you can. Exercise that kind of gives me an outlet to get some of that stress and frustration out. I think that keeps my heart pumping, and it also gives me a way to just kind of release. I think everybody needs to release. Second thing I tell everybody, some like it, some don't like it. I had to do a lot of praying, still do a lot of praying, because I think your faith is what sustains you. You got to have some power or something that sustains you when you feel like you're all alone. And I think that's probably the toughest feeling. And you're in a position when you're all alone and you don't feel like you can trust anybody. What do you do? So what I try to do there is listen, faith, definitely exercise, but then how do you reach out for those in similar positions? How do you reach out and touch that network that's like you to try to get some moral support so that you can encourage and so that they can encourage you? And all too often, and this is unfortunate, there are not many of us. It's a little bit better today, but there at that time, not many of us in positions, and you'd have to go seek and find somebody in a position like you. And to be honest with you, Cirillo, in some cases, if you did find somebody, not always were they empathetic to your cause because, unfortunately, we just got some history we have to take care of. You know what I'm saying? And I think that was one of the things you had to find some like-minded people to encourage you and be around you. And obviously family, any support structure, anything like that, all of that plays a big part of it because nobody knows the burden that a black man, or for that matter, a black boy or black woman, or anybody who's underrepresented, that they carry day in and day out. And I will be honest with you, I still walk the tightrope today. So don't let your listeners think that it's all done. I'm still walking it. I'm walking it right now. But I will tell you, there is a certain amount of pressure that's on you every day. And so I figured, hey, listen, I got to release this pressure. I got to be me. I got to be true to myself. And I got to figure out how to help others because I have overcome certain things. I have been blessed. I have been, greatly successful in some rights. And so it is bigger than me to sit here and keep all of that to myself. So I said, I'm going to put it in the book so people can learn about it and understand the origins of how I'm able to cope with this.
Yeah, man, I think that look, when you're talking about coping and balancing, I think that's one of the main things that every day you wake up and you like, I gotta remember my why on why I'm getting up and why I'm doing what I'm doing. I think that what I hear from you is somebody that kind of like understands what their why is, but also at the same time, every single day to reimagine that for the times we're in. Mm-hmm. And that's a way of staying motivated. But I think one of the things for me is that trying to sustain the motivation, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think that for a lot of young people, especially when you're dealing with young, I'm 35 and under, we're talking about mountain student loan debt, right? We're talking about some of the hardest times to get ahead. We've seen, our older generations come up and come through, very, very tumultuous times. But now I feel like there's another battle, civil rights battle, economic crisis dealing with student loans. What do you say to young folks out there when you're saying, yo, what about me? What about my generation? We're dealing with all this mountain student loan debt. What do you say to that young person out there and keep them motivated, knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, one of the things I tell the young folks out there here is this. Stay focused, stay on that mission, don't give up, get you a side hustle. Get you a side hustle, and entrepreneurship is not something that's just excluded for certain people. Be an entrepreneur, learn all that you can about business, understand the things that interest you, do an introspection and do some type of inventory of your talents, what you like, go pursue that. Now, with regard to the student loans, hey, there's some creative things coming out with financing. I would tell everybody to get fully up to par on not only the student loan aspect of it and what you owe, but understand how this financial system works and figure out how you can make it work for you. I get it. I remember the day loans, and you start getting those pieces of paper that come in and say, this is due, this is due. And you're like, man, wait a minute, gosh. And it's going to take me 75 years to pay it off, that kind of stuff. And so you can't. And so one of the things I started to do is, what are the opportunities that avail themselves to me that I can go out and look for? I'll give you one example. Guys I knew, and maybe guys in medical school, one of the things like, wow, if I go work in a small town, I can get my tuition written off. Go to a small town, work for 3 years, those kind of things. Those kind of things are more prevalent now, whether you're a data scientist, whether you're a project manager, whether you're an analyst, try to figure out what are those things, the positions that you go work, different companies that you go work for, what are the things that you can ask for? Because I do believe you are in a more powerful position today to ask for things, and there are more things out there. But I do know that student loan issue, listen, probably worse than it was when I had to do the deal, but I know the feeling, I know the pain. And one of the things that I tried to do is, what can I do to go research to try to help myself either get me some more ends to pay down on this loan, or is there student loan forgiveness, or is there a program that I can seek out? I went to the nth degree looking for everything, and eventually you overcome. It doesn't last forever. It doesn't. And believe you me, I think me and my boys at some point in time, we're like, man, will we ever get out of this? And it looks dire when you're in it, but hang in there, you will get out of it, and you can see a better day.
And one thing I gotta ask though is, writing the book ain't easy, right? And what about me ain't 50 pages, right? And what I'm saying is that it takes time, right?
Right.
But not only at what point did you want to write the book, and we got some of the reasons why you felt like you should write the book.
Right.
But I just want to give you your flowers right now and say straight up congratulations for even completing the book, publishing the book, getting out there. I think anytime that you sit down and you put your thoughts on the paper and you crystallize it in history, that's a huge accomplishment, right? But especially for a Black man in your position. And so what does it feel like for you, right, at this moment in your career to be able to have that piece of like history, right? Because that book is going to live longer than you. What does that mean for you, for future generations, for people in your family, lineage, things of that nature?
I think it's probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. The book has been in me for a long time, Cirillo. I mean, I've been thinking about a book since I was probably 14, 15. 14, 15, you don't have enough to talk about. But as a kid, certain experiences and things that you had, like, wow. And I used to keep little notes. I've kept little pieces of notebook paper, man, since 15. Wow. And just taking notes on stuff my dad and my mom told me, or stuff that happened to me. And so I'd write those little things down. And yeah, listen, you look at me where I am now age-wise. Yeah, I know people like, man, you got to throw away all that junk, all that paper. Well, I kept those little notes and I codified that information so that, 3 or 4 years ago when I really got serious, I had them and I could go back and recollect. But I think the thing about it is it's legacy. Not only is it legacy for me, it's legacy for my kids. It's legacy for others who are saying that, wow, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know there's somebody else exactly like me. So what I'm doing is pouring out into the ether, into the ethos. Listen, you can get over too. You can survive as well. But I think for me, it has been a labor of love because I knew I always wanted to do it. And I had some pent up frustrations.
Like frustrations. Was it like the writer's block? Was it getting to the publication or publishing of it? Like what were some of those frustrations?
I think some of the things I talked about, the good, bad, ugly, and indifferent, those experiences. I said, somebody's got to learn from that. I said, I got to get this out. I talk about, there was an article came out, and I'll tell you this. I didn't put it in the book. I made a speech several years ago, and the lady said, wow, I hadn't planned to come to your forum, but I did. And she started to cry. And she says, you helped me change my life. Wow. I'm glad I came. And that's when I knew I had to really get it finished. But in writing the book, the hard part of it is, as you're writing, the self-doubt. Is anybody gonna read this? Does anybody care? Does anybody even want to know? They don't know who you are. So I'm up at 3 o'clock in the morning writing, and I'm going through the process, and I'm rewriting. And just so you know, this book was probably edited, not including grammar edits, probably 46, 47 times.
Man.
In terms of rewrite this, do this, publisher saying do this. So you get to the point, man, does that make sense? Does, would X person care? Would Cirillo care? Would J person, Y person, Z person care? And if you don't watch it, you'll get caught up. And all the naysayers and all the self-doubt comes in. So I had to fight that off. And you fight that off and say, I'm doing this. And that's how you just push through.
That's interesting, man. I remember Ta-Nehisi Coates, right? He was talking about when he was a young writer. He was coming out, literally spending so much time in the comments defending every single word, right? Whether it be good, bad, pro, con. And he's got to a point where it was like, wait, my job is not to interact with every single commentator. My job is to evoke thought. And I think that in the midst of what you're saying is that really and this is for anybody out there, right, listening to this right now, is like when you are creating what you want to create and it comes from the depth of your soul and whatever that is, and you're doing it from a place of love, like I think oftentimes we focus on the naysayers and not our supporters. And I believe that we got more supporters than we do haters. And I think that like what you did was you said, you know what? I'm putting aside the naysayers for a second, and I'm gonna get to the people that support me. But ultimately, though, I'm gonna get to a goal of mine. And whether or not one person or 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people read it, I think it's still mission accomplished. And I think every single day, I also struggle with that. Oftentimes, we let perfection be the enemy of good, right? Sometimes we're not good enough, imposter syndrome, And that's why, like, brothers like you that come into my orbit, man, I'm very appreciative of, because y'all motivate me every single day. When I look around me and I see the network, I'm like, yo, Dijon, publish a book. And I'm thinking like, hey, I want to publish a book one day. And it's obtainable, right? It's just that, but we got to see it and believe in it. I think What About Me is exactly hitting on that point. It's like, What About Me is not just a cry out for saying, hey, I want to be seen. Hey, like literally, What About Me is I'm going to do what makes me happy as a Black man, as a person of color in America, right? No matter the circumstance. And that's why the book is very powerful, man. And I think that like anybody out there listening right now, one, y'all should be sharing this interview right now. You should be commenting below, showing some love for this brother. If you haven't bought the book and you want to buy the book, What About Me right now is across all platforms. You can go in bookstores, you can go on Amazon, doesn't matter. What About Me is going to be there. But yeah, man, I think that like, Dijon, we've done these conversations like what? This is like our fourth
or fifth,
fifth conversation, right? And every time we do it, I feel like I get a deeper appreciation for who you are, because usually we do these conversations like on a panel. So I don't get to talk to you as like brother to brother. It's always like other people getting in and get the rap. And so I know you're a family man, and you got sons, right? And so like you got little nephews and you got little cousins. I mean, I know about legacy and lineage, but like when you read this book, what do you want them to learn about the man of Dijon Jackson?
I want them to realize that he spoke his truth. He was true to himself, and he also cared about others. And I think that's very important. You've got to speak your truth. You've got to know who you are. And I think that's one of the issues we have to grapple with in this society, Black men, Black women. And really, the book is for Black men, Black boys, Black women, people of color, because there's so many things. If you don't know who you are and you're grappling with all these issues, you'll never get to your purpose. You'll never get to what you really want to do to satisfy you. And to your point earlier you made, there's always going to be naysayers, there's always going to be people who hate and all this kind of thing. You've got to press forward, go with your heart. And what you have in your heart and your desire, you see that through to the end. And the way I thought about it, Cirillo, was this: if one person likes it, if it helps one person, job well done. Job well done for me. Now, the other aspect of it is looking at a legacy. Yeah, I've got sons, I've got a daughter, I've got extended family, your nieces and your nephews. And I want them to see, hey, look at my example, but don't use it as a measuring stick. You go way beyond. You write, you produce, you create, you become an entrepreneur, you create your own capital, your own wealth, and don't settle for just one track. I have a whole nother life, a day job. And that's something that I do. That's a vocation. But I came to that point. I'm going to do more. And so what I would tell people is that, it was probably a little bit later for me because of the things and the complexities that I had to deal with. But wherever you are today, if you're 20 something, 30 something, yeah, you got a vocation, you got things you do. But at the same time, what are those other things you want to do? Start to foster and facilitate those things and grow. And so that's what I'm trying to tell my, nieces, nephews, extended family, my sons, start to nourish and actually fertilize those thoughts and ideas now. Don't wait till you're 45. Don't wait till you're 50. Start now.
Facts. Like literally done is good enough. There's it's something about I read in his book, I forget the name of the book, about thin slicing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. You may have a goal of, let's we talking about running before we came on the show, right? And I was like, yeah, hopefully I want to get to like a half marathon and marathon one day. But I'm not gonna run a marathon if I'm just started out running, right?
Right.
And even if my weekly goal is 10 miles, but I ran 8, I should feel a sense of pride and motivation around the fact that I still did 8 of my 10. I think oftentimes, like we don't reach our goals, we feel so deflated. It's like, yo, I can't do it. I'm not good enough. And it's like, nah, you just not at the mark yet, but that don't mean like stop. That means no, keep going, right?
Right.
And that's why yo, every time I see a book put out by somebody that's from the community, I'm like, yo, this is really what it's about. It's about, not about, oh, I'm this age or I'm that age, right? And what's funny is you could have been 14 and wrote a book, and guess what? It could have been a second edition, and then a third edition, and then a fourth and a fifth. And so even if you are a young person and you feel like you don't have anything to say, I think that I would actually like flip that on its head a bit though, and go, you know what? Young person, it's okay to learn in public. It's okay to, fly by the seat of your pants, man, and go, look, man, that's what young people do. We need our young people to be courageous. We need to step up and empower our young people. And so, look, man, if y'all out there and you 10 years old and you want to put out a children's book, you put out that children's book.
You put it out.
You don't have to be an adult to put out a children's book. Oftentimes I'd be seeing adults put out children's books. I'm like, that's cool, but it would be dope if we had more children put out their perspective on what their lives look like on a day-to-day basis. But anyway, don't get too much off on a tangent about children's books.
No.
But for the folks out there, because I know we got a few more minutes that I check time, man. I want to make sure I respect your time. I know you're a busy man. But what's next? So is it book tours? Is it more things coming through the pipeline we should be looking for? What's up?
Yeah, we're looking really to get out. Hopefully this COVID and this Delta variant and all this stuff subsides or abates. We want to get out and see people face to face. We want to talk to people, book signings. We want to talk, have discussions, have face to face, have even forums, because I think there's so many people reaching out for help. Again, I've gotten so many emails from people that I don't know. I've done a lot of Zooms, and I'll do those if that's the nature of the situation. I'll do Zooms to talk and share to small groups, large groups, whatever it is, to get the message out. My goal is to saturate the message so that we can have a conversation. And the goal behind, these whole projects, the documentary, the book, was to invoke and be a catalyst for conversation so we can get better. And I will tell you, you mentioned something about a kid, or anybody writing. I didn't just jump into the book. I started writing little articles. So if you're writing a little article, write it down. You don't have to publish it, write it down, story. I wish I had written some of the stuff at 8 or 9 and could have gotten it published. But in today's time, it's easier to do whatever. Don't let anything ever dampen your spirit or your fire. And don't ever let anybody put a value on you. And don't ever let anybody devalue you. That's something that I'm going to put in the next book, your value and your worth. Because a lot of times we let other people devalue us. And I've got a lot of circumstances and situations where I can explain that to people. Can't do that. So I want to also do some inspirational writings for folks. And then I want to do a deal on connecting the history dot to dot for Black people. They need to understand in a very, very word-friendly manner, or manner where they can actually say, what have we really done in this country? What have we done in this world? Because a lot of times people are like, oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't know that. But I want them to see the integral part that they've played in everything from commerce to automotive to technology, to, many of the things that have happened throughout history. There have been people of color that have been very much so the catalyst and the prime movers. We just don't know it. So I want to put it in a dot to dot. And when I say dot to dot, that's just really figurative to say it's really easy to pull it together and look at the impacts that have happened in everything from advertising to science, to putting people on the moon.
I got a question though. So, we seen what's happening in Georgia and in Texas, states like Alabama, basically saying, decrying like, campaigns against critical race theory. When we talk about information connecting the dots dot to dot, what you're saying is that you're showing the valuation of Black and brown people that had on this country, right?
Yes.
But we don't see that in our textbooks. So how do we begin to disseminate and get this information out to our folks so they know it, right? So they feel a sense of pride in American history, and where it's not just always, relegated to just being enslaved people or people that immigrated to, to this country, that there's a illustrious history behind Black people and brown people in this country. Like, how do we begin? And I know we can say, we'll just put it in the schools. Well, we're talking about, elections got to happen. And we talk about city, school boards where majority white folks on there, but typically don't have Black and brown people, best interests at heart. So how do we begin to disseminate this information in a real way without having to deal with the politics of the day? Because oftentimes I feel like it's lost in translation with politics.
Right. I think I've been very much so encouraged. I've seen a lot of young brothers, a lot of sites that are pulling up information and disseminating information about our ancient history, about our history in Africa. I think those things are really good, but we've got to be more intentional. You might be surprised to know this, Cirillo, but my first love was history. The science and the engineering and the artificial intelligence, all that stuff came later. And that was just a function of, capability or ability. But history was my first love. And that first love is where I see myself pull back to now. And I think what we've got to do is go out as families. If you don't have a family, if you got nieces, nephews, if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you got to go research. You got to go research. You got to go out there and get these books. You got to read. Can't just read one book. You got to read more books. And then what you've got to do is start to teach your family. You got to start to teach your friends. Hey, let me explain this to you. Did you know this? Did you understand this? Because we've got to have this collective group impact where everybody is teaching, so that people start to say, I can't teach it all, but I gave you enough of an informational factoid that you are like, I am curious. I got to go check this out. I need to look at these things, because right now people see history as just a topic. And more importantly, it is actually I would say the spark that lights our innovative engine. Because if we start to feel good, our kids feel good, our communities feel good, we're like, wait a minute, this story got twisted somehow. And now we're starting to set the story straight.
A question I got to ask though, right? Because you talk about books and history, like top 5 history books that you read over the years. So folks can, we talk about, teaching and disseminating information. I want to make sure people come away with some good books to read, just in case they happen to stumble upon this interview.
Well, I thought a couple of books. I got them right here with me. Definitely. Everybody needs to read this book, Cast.
Yes.
Got to read Cast. Very interesting book. Read that one. This is one that goes back. Most folks don't know about it. Germany's Black Holocaust. Everybody hears about the Holocaust, but you need to hear about what happened from 1890 to 1945 and what was done to our people. Very, very much so.
Now I gotta get that one. Now I gotta get there.
Gotta go get this one.
Yep. How
the Word is Passed. Clint Smith.
Hey, that just came out. Clint Smith from New Orleans too, right?
Oh, that's right. That's right. Gotta get this. Hey, and you tell your listeners, we didn't plan this. We didn't plan this. Now this is just
y'all get that book.
To get that book. We didn't plan that. And then I know you got this one.
Oh, of course. Yeah, man. I read that book back in like 2017 when it came out.
I know you got this one. And then there are a couple on that I'd like to share with you.
Now, y'all look, all those books, especially Cast. And another book I'm gonna drop in there. Oh, go ahead. The Wilmington.
There are a couple of books. I got 2 or 3 books on this. I think we need to look at this and relate it to where we are now, because the same shenanigans are going on.
Absolutely.
Same shenanigans.
Absolutely.
And this one,
and if you're wondering, right, and all these good, all the books, there's 6 books he put up there, right?
yeah,
And the last one about to put there a book about Emmett Till. Now, if y'all haven't read Cast, you haven't read The Color of Law. If you're wondering right now, we're talking about digital redlining, right? The Color of Law will allow a good foundation of what traditional redlining was back in the day, and then you can then kind of extrapolate that into the or transpose that into what digital redlining is right now for Black folk, right, and brown folk across the digital space, and what it means to have a digital divide in this country. There's 2 major issues right now happening on the forefront, which are major civil rights issues, including healthcare, but the digital divide being one of them in terms of internet service providers and broadband access, or the lack thereof, right? And so this is happening in inner cities all across the country. And that's why, and I don't get too political, but that's why the infrastructure bill is so important, because it's going to begin to build broadband infrastructure in Black and brown communities that couldn't get the funding because they didn't have the infrastructure. These internet service providers were saying, we can't come to your neighborhoods, not because we don't want to, because the federal government or the state governments don't want to put up the infrastructure in your communities to get it done, right? And so all these books kind of like primers. And so, people say like, racism and how we show up now ain't nothing but iterations of the past, right? And that's why it's important. And, D. John touched on something that's very important, which is like history. If you don't know the history, people can pull the wool over your eyes and you can't really see what's going on, throw up smoke screens, and you think everything is okay. It's always important to get your reading done, right? To do your own research, develop your own ideas. It's okay to start somewhere, but don't let that be the end point. Let that be the beginning or the catalyst for you and your journey of learning about this country's history, right? And so with that being said, though, D. John, you get the last words, brother. What's up?
Hey, I would say thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure. There are a lot of different things I want to get out into the world. The book is just, one part of it, the documentary pieces. But to your point, again, my first love is history, connecting the dots. How do we educate? How do we encourage people? How do we inspire people where they are right now, but then also teach them a sense of pride and bringing those things together? And I tell you, Howard W. Zinn is another one of my favorite authors. Howard W. Zinn, A People's History, United States History. Very, very authentic book, kind of a radical dude, but man, it's just very interesting to hear that. But I would say to you, reach out to whomever you can, share your truth, help somebody along the way, because what I'm trying to do is pour what I've experienced, what I've learned, and help others. That's the best thing I can do. And that's my purpose. And that's when I came to that conclusion 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. It's bigger than me. And it's incumbent upon me to do the best that I can do to help any and everybody. And brother, I appreciate you having me on. My good friend, Teru Brooks, man, bringing us together, man. Can't forget the Godfather, man. The Godfather bringing this stuff together, and just being in a circle with you guys is huge. So I'm available to talk, to speak, to do whatever. Books on Amazon, documentaries on Amazon Prime. Blackbookstore.com has the book. You can hit me up on my Instagram, d.john_Jackson, Twitter @djohnjackson, LinkedIn djohnjackson, Facebook djohnjackson. So just trying to do it, my brother.
Absolutely, man. We thank you so much for your time, man. Look, and when he says hit him up, this is a very accessible brother. He's not like some like, oh, I'm not gonna return your call, I'm not gonna return your DM or your email. So look, y'all got questions, y'all need answers. We trying to do it different over here, right? We're bringing people to the stage that actually love Black people, that care about Black people, building Black communities in the right way, right? And that's through information, a whole lot of love, and a whole lot of accountability. So look, man, we appreciate you, D. John, once again for coming through and sharing the stage with your brother. It's been real. So until next time, man, anything we could do on our end, of course, we can pub the book, man. Send me all whatever you need, and then let's get this energy moving. You know what I mean? We're trying to get the New York Times bestseller going.
All right, we'll do that, my brother. Thank you so much.
All right, bro. Later.
All right.